Hiya folks, Icarus here, and I was reading an old Reddit post about a week or so ago that was talking about how there are too many guides out there and how a lot of them are too complex and they're too bloated with information for people that really understand them and want just to know the basics about how a job works. And there are those guides out there that are too simplistic as well and don't go enough into detail about them. Well, to help solve this issue, I will be presenting to you, the viewer, a series of videos that will be covering the basics of each of the jobs that are in the game in the most simplest yet informative way possible. Note, though, however, that I will not be covering all the jobs at the moment. I feel like that would take too much time to level up each one at the moment for me. So I will be only covering those that I find personally enjoyable. Think of this more of a casuals guide. Before we continue, though, if you like this kind of content and wish to see more, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more 14 stuff. More on how you can support the channel at the end. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start off this series by talking about my favorite job, Ninja. So like with any other damage dealing job, Ninja has its basic 1-2-3 combo. But at the end of each of these combos, you have two positionals. They are Aeolian Edge and Armor Crusher. Now, what are positionals? Positionals are basically skills that you use that can deal more damage when you hit the enemy in a particular spot, or when you are in a particular position. For example, Aeolian Edge does more damage at the rear of an enemy, where Armor Crusher does more damage to an enemy when you're hitting them on the flank. The flank is the side of an enemy, whereas the rear is the back of an enemy. Which side? Either side. Either left or right. Doesn't matter. As long as it's one of the flanks. Now, you also have your damage over time ability, which is called Shadow Fang. And you also have a couple other abilities you have at your disposal at around level 30. You have Mug, which is just a damage ability at the moment. It does play more of an important role later. You have your 1 AoE, which is called Death Blossom. And you also have an ability called Hide, but at this point, Hide isn't really all that useful. So don't worry about that too much. At level 30, Rogue, which is the job that becomes Ninja, is pretty simple. You don't have to worry about too much. You just have to do your 1, 2, 3 over and over again, basically. Now, once you hit 30 and go from 30 to 50, though, then Ninja starts to get a little bit more complex for people. Mainly because of its gimmick. Now, the way ninjutsus work is that you have to basically input certain combinations of what the game calls mudra in at a time. Now, there are 3 of these mudras that the game does drip feed you through its job quest chain very well, in my opinion, and gets you used to how each one works. So, as I stated previously, there are 3: Ten, Chi, and Jin. Now, if you want more of a visuals guide, because if you're like me, you need visuals, 10 is blue, Chi is red, and Jin is yellow. Now, if you're colorblind, another visual way of looking at it, or better memorization way, is 10 is T, Chi is C, and Jin is J. Now, each ninjutsu is comprised of either 2 or 3. Except the first one you get, which is Fuma Shuriken, which you only need to use 1 of the mudra to input. For example, if you wanted to use a ninjutsu known as Raiton, which we'll cover here in a sec, you need to use 2 mudra to be able to execute it. You can't just use it like you can with the other abilities. The list of these ninjutsus are as follows: Fuma Shuriken, which only requires 1, Katan, Raiton, and Hyotan, which require 2 mudras. Then you have Hutan, Dotan, and Suitan, which requires 3 mudras. And then you have Goka, Mekiyaku, and Hyosho Ranryu, which require 2 as well, but you also need to use a particular enhanced version of an ability that you get later at around level 80, so don't worry about those 2 for right now. So what are these combinations then? Because this is the part that always trips people up when trying to learn ninja, is that they feel like memorizing these different combinations are so difficult that they just don't bother attempting it. But this is where I am here to help you out. For you see, it's actually very simple. The following that I'm about to show you on screen is more of a visual representation of the different combinations. They are as follows. Input any one mudra to get Fuma Shuriken. For Raiton, Katan, and Hyotan, they are as follows. Input any mudra except Chi, and then input Chi as the last one to get Raiton, which is a single target attack. Input any mudra except Ten, or T, and then input 10 as the last one to get Katan, which is your AoE, or area of effect damage. And for Hyotan, input any mudra except Jin, or J, as the last one, and then input Jin as the last one to get Hyotan, which is another single target attack, even though its effect isn't that good, so you probably shouldn't use it at the moment once you hit 50. Now the next 3 ninjutsu for the final ones that you get at 50, once you get Jin, are as follows. Input any 2 mudra except 10, and then input 10 as the last one to get Hutan, which will be part of your opener every time. Because what Hutan does is that it speeds up the skill speed, meaning your GCDs will speed up a lot faster. And that way you can do more attacks and get more damage in. You'd want to have it up all the time if you can. Now there is a special gauge for this as well when you get it. It'll be a little pinwheel. They'll last 60 seconds. So make sure you have this up all the time. Before you do a pull, before you do a boss, just put it up. And if you lose it in the middle of a fight, just put it back up. The next one is Dotan, which is the following. Any 2 mudra except Chi, which is C, and then input Chi as the last one to get Dotan, which is another AoE that you place on the ground that makes enemies heavy and deals damage over time, which is another dot, you could say, that you have. And then the last one is called Suitan, which is any 2 mudras except Jin, or J, and then use J last, and then you get Suitan, which is another single target one, but Suitan is actually a good one, because it gives you the hidden effect, which allows you to use an attack called Trick Attack that you get when you're getting to level 30, that makes the enemy more vulnerable. Now I know that sounds very complex, and Ninja is not really an easy job to grasp, but hopefully showing you it on screen and trying to explain it the best way I know how will help you be able to memorize it more, because it really is just a memorization game. As long as you remember what the last mudra is in each of the ninjutsu combos, you should be fine, because that's generally how I do it. Like if I want Raiton, I just remember, okay, Chi's the last one, so just input any of the other ones first, and then do Chi and then Raiton. Now, as for the other 2 ninjutsus, Hyosho Ranryu and Goka Mekiyaku, as I stated before, these 2 you get when you're around level 76, I think. So these 2 you get later on when you hit level 80. And it's because of the ability Enhanced Kusatsu, which is a trait that you learn at that level. Because you do get the Kusatsu ability early on, which allows you a free ninjutsu, basically. But for these 2 to work, you have to be at that level. And you have to use Enhanced Kusatsu in order to actually use them. Those 2 combinations are as follows. Kasatsu, then input any mudra except Jin or J, and then you use Jin. Then you get Hyoshoranryu, which is a single target attack that does 1200 potency base. Yeah, that's a lot of damage. The second is Kasatsu, then any mudra except 10, then input 10 as the last one. Then you use Goka Mekiyaku, which is another AoE, like Katan, but a more fiery and destructive version of it, which deals a little bit more damage. Or is it a lot? I don't remember. But yeah, those are all the ninjutsus of ninja. Now again, it is a lot to take in at once, so I would say don't worry about those last two. If you're at level 50 and getting to 80, I'd say just practice memorizing the combinations of each of the ninjutsus. Because it really is just a memorization game at the end of the day with ninja. Let's look at the second gauge you get around level 60. Because yes, like every other job, ninja has 2 gauges. Other than the pinwheel, you get what you call a ninki gauge, which looks like a scroll, and you can go up to 100 with it. So the way this gauge works is basically each time you use a particular ability, like let's say Armor Crusher or Aeolian Edge, you get about 10-15 Ninki gauge points. Once you hit 50% on the gauge, you're able to use one of the following abilities. Either Hellfrog Medium, which is another AoE, or, and forgive me if I say this incorrectly, Baba Kakra, which is a single target attack. Now each of these does cost 50, so try not to overcap and go up to 100 when you have like 80. Whenever you have 50, use one of these two. And there is a third ability that you get at level 80 for this gauge, and it's called Bunshin, which allows you to basically summon a shadow clone of yourself to deal extra damage when you're doing your main hit combo. Now there's a lot of other abilities that Ninja has for its toolkit, but since they are more advanced skills and they would make the job sound a lot more complex than it already is, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but I will go over briefly right now what each one is and how they work. Briefly as I can make it. One of them being the ability Hide. Now you might remember me saying earlier in this guide about what it actually does. Well, now it comes into play once you get mudras. Hide basically resets them when you go into Hide. So what you'd want to do basically is put up Hutan right at the start and then use Hide to reset your mudras to be able to use them during the fight. You also have Trick Attack, and mind you, Trick Attack is also positional. I mentioned that you'd want to use this in combination with Suitan. Right after you use Suitan, make sure you're either in the back of the enemy or use True North, one of your roll actions, to be able to ignore the positional and just use it to get the vulnerability debuff on the enemy. Then you have Mug, which I did mention earlier in the video as well. This one actually comes into play here as well, because once you have the Ninki gauge unlocked, Mug gives you an instant 50 points in it. Or is it 30? It's either 30 or 50. And then you have your other damage abilities, your single target attack abilities, called Dream Within a Dream, and then Assassinate. In order to use Assassinate, you have to use Dream Within a Dream first. And it should be pretty easy to do that combination there, because Assassinate will be grayed out until you use Dream Within a Dream first. And then you have a lovely little ability called TCJ. Now this ability looks complicated, but it's really not. All it does is basically allow you to perform 3 ninjutsu back to back. Now you could actually use this with Trick Attack. And no, you don't have to input any mudra for this. You just have to use 3 ninjutsu back to back once you activate this ability. For example, you want to use Trick Attack this ability. So what you do is you're able to use Fuma Shuriken, then Raiton, then Suiton, and then once Suiton's up, you just use Trick Attack. If you want to lay Doton down on the ground and you don't have any charges available, any Mudra charges available, because you're only allowed 2 for the job, then what you do is that you will normally do Fuma Shuriken, Katan, and then Doton. So yeah, TCG is actually a very handy ability, but note that if you use TCJ, or a Tenchi Jin as it's called in game, you cannot move throughout the entire ability. So if you make the slightest movement, the skill will cancel, and you'll have to wait for it to come off of the global cooldown. So just note that. And the final ability is Maisui. Now this is basically, and this is an interesting ability. I didn't really get it at first when I was using it, but once I did get it, it actually makes quite a bit of a difference. So basically, if you use Suiton, but don't have Trick Attack available, what you can do is you can use Maisui to take the Suiton buff that you have and convert it into 50 Ninki points, which will then allow you to use Baba Kakra, or Hellfrog Medium, or Bunshin, or any of those 3 abilities. That's basically all it does. The follow-up ability to Death Blossom is called Hake Mujinsatsu. Death Blossom, and this one is part of your AoE combo as well. Hopefully it made some sense, and if you're still confused, if you're still needing more of an in-depth view into Ninja, then there is a great video by Wesk Alber. I'll link his video in the description below. Now, as I said, it looks complex, and like I said, it just takes practice. But by level 80, you will hopefully understand how Ninja works. I hope so. Ninja is a really fun job. It's probably one of the fastest jobs in the game, speed-wise. As long as you boil down the memorization part of the Mudra system that Ninja has, you'll have a lot of fun with it. It's a very busy job, but it's definitely worth it in the end. And yeah, that about wraps it up. I hope you all got something out of this video. I do apologize for the long delay in it, but the next guide video should be up within a week, I hope. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe for more if you're interested. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment down below. If you wish to support the channel any more than just besides subscribing, there will be a Patreon coming soon. And as always, keep soaring beyond your dreams.